And he's going into, in chapter 3, his final session with the growing churches he had poured his life into. So obviously, he had listened. He did not spend his life as a fisherman. Instead, he became a fisher of men. And he used those skills, and he used everything he had learned in those early years of fishing and following Christ to now go out, and he became such an effective nurturer of the Church of Jesus Christ. And he's writing back to the churches that he had been a part of their lives. And they were growing, but now they were scattered, and the specific ones that he was ministering to were in the heart of the Roman Empire. And so these people that were living in the heart of the Roman Empire were facing both fiery trials, we covered that last time, literally fiery trials, and alluring enticements. Now think about, I joke and I talk about, how, people spend 2-3 hours watching sports. How would you like to go to the Olympics if they didn't wear any clothes at all? That's how they did it in Rome. They wore nothing. And that was an alluring enticement. And it wasn't just the sports, the materialism, the theaters. Do you think they built those theaters just for tourists 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years later to go to? Those people were into entertainment. They were into all types of cultural things. And these people were torn between the fiery trials that they were facing and the glittering allurements. They were torn between being loyal to Christ and facing painful persecutions, or just floating along with the Roman world and its endless pursuits of pleasures and possessions. That was what was tearing them. You say, well, can't you have both? Well, remember, the best way to understand the Bible, and we'll see this on Sunday night, the first canon of textual interpretation is, what did it mean to the people that first received it? It doesn't matter what it means to me. What did God mean when he wrote them? Well, the people that got this book believed that Jesus Christ called them to have their citizenship in heaven, and that they were supposed to live godly, righteous lives. So do you know why Nero began to kill Christians? Do you know what he put? Rome was very legal, very following jurisprudence. They followed legal practices. If the emperor was going to kill someone, he had to file a charge against them to burn them at the stake, like we talked about last time. What charge did he file against them? The first charge we find on the law books of the Roman Empire against biblical Christians is they were haters of humanity. That's what they were called. That's what the Roman government said. And it said they are haters of humanity because they will not come to the arenas. They will not come to the Colosseums. They will not come to the theaters. They have withdrawn from the festivals that the Roman Empire had, with all the false worship of false gods, with all the decadence, with all the nudity, with all the violence, with all the gratuitous bloodshed. The Christians said, this does not please God, and they stepped away. Now that's totally contrary to 21st century thinking of Christians. Do you know what? I go to church conferences all the time. Do you know what I hear at church conferences? You got to do everything you can to make people feel comfortable. We don't want any unbeliever. That's called a seeker-friendly church, and we got to have a church where they do not feel out of place and they feel comfortable and at home, and don't you say anything, they'll jar them. They didn't subscribe to that in the first century. In fact, believers didn't feel unbelievers would ever even want to come to their services because they were so not of this world. And so there they were, torn with facing the persecution of following Christ or just floating along with the world. And Peter's congregation in Central Asia, Roman province of Asia, Turkey today, sounds eerily like 21st century Christianity. It's, are you floating or are you fighting against the flesh? Are you floating along with the world and with the allurements and with the attractions and with the materialism and with the whole culture? Or are you fighting against your flesh and saying that doesn't please God and I can't go any longer that direction? We either stop floating along with the crowd that lives for the weekend sports, that lives for the weekend parties, that lives for the weekend fun, and begin to live every day as sacred for Christ and suffer. That's one choice. Or we just float along with the world as believers and enjoy as much as we can the best of both worlds. That's where a lot of Christians are today. And what they haven't read is Matthew 6:24. You can't do both. Either you serve pleasures, the material world, the endless acquisition of more, the endless dissatisfaction in wanting newer and better and brighter and bigger, or you don't. And you can't blend them. You serve one or the other. The question this morning is, are you floating along in the river of materialism, or are you fighting against its control of your heart? For where your treasure is, there will your heart be. Of your mind, are you going to be full of light or darkness? Of your will, who are you serving? That's the question. And it's the proof of who we really serve. We try and stay focused on the Lord, especially on Sundays, but so much of our life is consumed with the things and activities and pursuits that are tied to materialism that it's very hard to focus on God, we find. And Jesus said, it is. It's hard. And Peter agreed with him. Godly living is a struggle. In fact, Paul, before Peter, Paul wrote, the Christian life is an agonizomai. There's a nice Greek word we understand. It's agonizing. It's like wrestling. It's like boxing. It's fighting against our flesh. Not against other people. We're not called to fight people. We're called to fight the traitor that lives within us, our flesh.